Namaste, ladies and gentlemen. Effective data management in clinical trials, and why is it important? It is important because clinical trial data management is the process of collecting, collating, cleaning, managing patient and overall clinical trial data in a way that complies with internal SOPs, protocols, and obviously the applicable regulatory requirements. In other words, quality of data generated contributes significantly to the overall outcome of the clinical study, and clinical trial data management is an integral part of this process. Now, to discuss this critical topic, we have with us a true expert in this field. Noel Keegan, ladies and gentlemen, is someone who has lived and breathed clinical data management throughout his career. In fact, he has previously discussed, I think on this very forum, of how clinical trial data management has evolved and improved over time. Now, today, as we get into this topic, we're going to split this topic primarily into two parts. Effective data management in the study setup phase would be one part of it, and the second part would be aspects of data management from a maintenance and study closeout perspectives. It's likely going to be a multi-part series. Noel, welcome to the data management party, which is actually your party.
Thanks, Jay. Great to be here. I love that. Data management party.
Yes, that's what it is. That's what it is. And you know, I want to get right into it. You are uber experienced in both the depth and span of trial data management. Noel, please tell us, what are the basic tenets of data management?
Yeah, happy to, Jay. So I think that the main part of the setup phase is to consider and to configure the right system to be able to be used. So deciding and determining the most appropriate electronic data capturing system is critical to the success of your project. And what we try to do is not only balance the 21 CFR Part 11 compliance systems, where there's lots and lots out there, but considering that from a medical device and diagnostics perspective, some common features come up in our conversations with sponsors quite often. The capabilities of the system to be suitable for what the project needs, and also a system that is cost effective and agile. So what I mean by that is that a system that can actually change its boundaries and to be flexible enough to cope with the differences between very different protocols within the MedTech space, but also to be done at a level that's going to be quick and relatively cheap to be able to do. So if you want to have the setup done quickly, if you want to move in towards your change requests, you want to be able to make those changes quickly. But also another aspect of that is that the EDC environment is changing. So it's not just about capturing your electronic case report forms anymore. It's also, can you have a system that captures randomization in terms of an IVRS element, ePro, eConsent, modules around local labs or imaging or adjudications, or depending on the needs, can it all be done in one single platform? And the answer is yes, but it comes at a cost sometimes too. So I think our responsibility and something that we take pride on is to identify what the needs are of the project and what particular platform may be best suited for the sponsor and for that protocol or project itself.
So I can see how you're rolling in your experience and expertise from over time into pretty much every project that comes your way, right? Now, I have a question. In case a manufacturer chooses to pursue a clinical trial execution by themselves without involving a CRO, right? How do they go about comparing the different trial management systems available out there? What are some of the factors that they would need to consider? Where could they go wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that one of the things that we would actually look at is the size of the company itself, what the budget may actually look like, and what the needs are then as well of that particular study itself. So if it's the case that it's a first-in-human study, for instance, and there's only 5 to 10 subjects, you're looking at a very, very small domain then as well, that if you're considering a very convoluted, experienced database out there, you might be you might be overkill on that particular aspect. And you might be looking at something a little bit more basic, something that is fully compliant, but something that does things a little bit more nimbly then. If you're looking at a pivotal study, and you're looking at, 300 subjects, and you've got DICOM images, you've got various different modalities then as well, a CEC or a DSMB board that's going to require adjudication, and you're looking at a randomized study, for instance. You're looking at something that's not going to be a nimble system. You're going to be looking at a system that has those capabilities to be able to cope with that data and to be done in an automatic manner. So I think what we look at is a number of different environments, startup to very experienced MedTech firm. We look at the capabilities and requirements of the study and what type of study it is. And that drives an easy decision in terms of what type of system would be most suitable for that particular sponsor in that case.
Great. Yep. You have your overall trial management system. I know we were focused on the data management aspects of it, but I wanted to ask you this question because I've been asked this question by many people, especially in the startup phase, some of my friends in the Minneapolis area. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. I want to get back to the core of this topic, which is data management. And Noel, help us understand, how long does it take for a database to be set up?
It's a great question. So what we look at, and our standard answer really depends in around the 8 to 10 week mark. And what drives the actual times are a couple of different areas. The size of the case report forms, the number of unique CRFs is one consideration, but you can have a unique CRF with 4 questions, or you can have it with 50 different questions. So we look at the size and complexity of the overall case report form itself. We look at the number of repeating forms, so not just the unique count, but there might be 10 different visits. So we need to consider things like that. We need to look at the log forms, your adverse events, and the complexity around adverse events and the protocol deviations, device incidents or deficiencies, and different factors like that. And when we consider the case report form, that drives a number of the different subsequent models that we look at. So does the particular setup require other modules outside of EDC? So outside of the ECRF, are there other modules that need to be configured? Depending on the system, the vendor, sometimes the EDC vendor helps support with some aspects, and other aspects we actually drive ourselves. Some vendors don't let us near their proprietary information, and others are happy for us to go with that. So I think looking at the right EDC vendor, that can help drive the particular timeframes. And based on the size of the case report form, that will also help drive the number of edit checks that we expect to have in place. And that will also have an impact then as well on the times. We're never a limiting factor. And that's the one thing that I'd say. We've had sponsors coming to us saying, we need a system up and running in 2 weeks' time. Get it done. We have contingencies in place that will allow for that. And we might look at a split go live. We might look at getting the case report form cemented and stable as much as we can. But our edit checks will come at a later date. We can look at various other contingencies then as well. But ultimately, the biggest risk factor that we would have is, can we have a sponsor contact who meets us halfway? Can we have a relationship and a collaboration where we look at the case report form together, we look at our documentation, the data management plan, the ECRF completion guidelines, and the quicker we get our feedback back from the sponsors, the quicker we can actually move on with the next steps. And that's the real key to success. Having a really good relationship, and the more studies you do together to understand that, would be a key for further efficiencies in both time and costs.
Excellent overview, my friend. Well, the question inevitably goes towards risks. So can you help us understand, what are the risks associated with the database build?
Absolutely. And I think the level of complexity with the study drives a primary level of the risk factors. So what modules are you going to be looking at, and how complex is that? Are there going to be data integrations that are going to be involved that impact on the various different times, and ultimately the overall communication? Getting the right people to review the data at the right time is key to the success. So I'd refer to the collaboration with sponsors, making sure that they have their reviewers in place at the right time is exactly how we'd be able to achieve efficiencies in how we actually build the studies. If we get the right people in place at the right time, we can have a very, very efficient build process. If we don't, if we have CRF updates that are coming the day before we're hoping to go live, or a new version of the protocol that's delivered to us halfway through the build, or various different other challenges, we can cope with a lot, but we can't create miracles, unfortunately, then as well, depending on the circumstances. I think it's about making sure that we have everything that we need in place at the right time in order to be able to achieve and to mitigate against the risks that actually happen. We build into our timelines a certain element of change, and that's inevitable then as well for user acceptance testing. But what's really key is that if we get 70 to 80% of the case report form stabilized before we move on to the edit checks, and then get that stabilized before we move on to the user acceptance testing, we can have a very seamless process throughout the build process. And that ultimately is the hardest part of data management, to be able to get that right. But as long as we can get the right people in place at the right time, we can do that.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is actual experience and expertise spewing out the reality in no uncertain terms. I love the experience shining out here. Noel, you mentioned data integration, and that piqued my interest. I want to probe a little bit more on that front. How do you manage data integration? It's a critical part of the process. How do you go about it?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. And it really does depend. There's a couple of considerations. We might actually have a situation where a sponsor comes to us and say, and requests for integrations to happen. And when we look at it, our recommendation would be, we can certainly do it technically, but it's a lot more inefficient to be able to actually force fit an integration then as well between two different systems, or between the EDC firm then as well, to make sure that that data is being integrated across multiple different fields or forms. It might be the case that it's quite simple, and you have a manual upload, or the traditional model that we're starting to see would be APIs, and to have two systems talking to each other then as well through a configured API. And all of that is possible. The real question is whether it's a good idea or not. And that helps to deliberate on time and costs. It might be very possible to do something, but it'll take 12 weeks to be able to actually configure an integration. Or it might be impossible, to try and force fit that. And what's really important is that we act as the middle people then as well within this, between the sponsor and the EDC firm, to be able to manage that situation, to say, yes, this is going to be absolutely possible. It's a good idea. Let's move forward with it. Let's create a manual upload or an API, or be able to say, do you know what? You're force fitting this and it doesn't actually work in this particular case then as well. And our recommendation would not be to do it. And if the sponsors still want to go ahead with it, we'll push to make sure that it's done as best as we can. But if there's risks involved, we want to outline them then as well too. So it's never a clear-cut answer of whether it's good to do it or not to do it. But what's really important is that we have an honest conversation and collaboration together with the sponsors, so that we can understand the risks and benefits, and then move forward then as well based on that.
Excellent. Noel, thank you. Thank you so much for enlightening us on the data management aspects during the study setup phase of clinical trials. And we're going to have a couple of parts more. We're going to focus on the maintenance and the closeout phases. And I am sure we will see you all there. Thank you very much, Noel.
Thanks, Jay.